Hi, good morning from the UK. Welcome to the Pole Shift News, the home of the Mathstar Observatory. Guys, a little bit later on we're going to be focusing in on the probably most likely cause for creating some of the most recent changes that are taking place on our planet with regards to all the devastation and climate change that's taking place right now and has done over the last 28 to 48 hours. I'm talking about all these floods. Before we get into it, guys, huge thanks for those few people, and more recently those couple of individuals that have pushed a little bit further than others in order to support this observatory. It's a unique observatory. You won't find another website that provides all the data on the anomalies quite like what we do here, and more to the point, focuses in on probably the epicenter of what is the prime cause for all the changes taking place right now. It comes down to just two things, guys, and that is cosmic radiation caused by a result of a low solar output and a weakened magnetosphere. So let's get into it. So guys, as you can see, another day without sunspots on the disk. This is common now. Some people will say, oh, it's because we're in the solar minimum part of the solar cycle. We're coming towards the end, so you could expect to see less sunspots. Well, you can see what's been happening with the trend over the last 3 solar cycles. These have been dropping off exponentially, and some people are saying no, solar cycle 25 is going to be bigger than solar cycle 24. Just wait and see. I think I'll go with the trend, and I'll predict that even some of the other scientists and their reports that we've looked at, like the Penn report that states that after 2015 it might be unlikely that we'll see any sunspots as what's been taking place with the sun's umbrias. The temperature's been increasing, and from just simply the experiments that we've conducted ourselves with magnetic bearing materials, that when you introduce them to increased heat, they lose their magnetic ability to hold on to that intensity. So as you can see, we've got a depleting 33 year of 3 solar cycles consecutive, and to me that's a trend, guys. And what is going to happen simply as a result of that is we're going to have increased cosmic radiation. I've showed you this many times, but I just want to say something. This is the space environment overview that doesn't even cover the beginning of solar cycle 25. We can see just the end of solar cycle 24 here, but if we look at what happened after solar cycle 23 with the cosmic radiation, underneath so on the top of this chart you've got your sunspots, and then directly next column down we have the cosmic rays. As you can see, at the end of solar cycle 23 there was a huge amount of cosmic radiation. Now we know that cosmic radiation now leads to more cloud vapor in the upper atmosphere. We also have speculated recently on this channel that the ozone hole, the reason why it's not been expanding when it should be, is probably because cosmic radiation is interacting with the aerosols that create the ozone hole, and therefore stripping the aerosols away from the ozone hole, and the ozone hole as a result has been getting smaller when it should be getting bigger. It's baffling scientists as to why all of a sudden it started to shrink when they know during the temperature changes it should be on its increase. I think what's happening is the cosmic radiation that's inbound is attaching to these aerosols, which are very small particles. As a direct result, they're being transported then through the polar jet streams into the subtropical jet streams, and it's causing more water nuclei to be in our atmosphere, and that's why we're getting these massive floods like we're seeing right now, devastating crops in China and in the US. And if you live over here in the UK, are you telling me that you haven't noticed something strange about this summer? It's more like a January month with regards to temperatures, 10 degrees, and then all of a sudden, like today, they've forecast 30 degrees. Crops, vegetation can't handle these sporadic changes, and as a result it damages them. What they are more prone to is a slow change into the seasons, and a progressive change, what they can manage. You can't keep throwing these crops into, you know, extreme temperature changes, and that's what we're getting as a direct result of probably more inbound cosmic radiation, down to just two factors: grand solar minimum, you know, a decaying solar output over the last 3 solar cycles, and on top of that, guys, an increasing weakening magnetosphere. Both of these things will allow more cosmic radiation in as a result. With regards to the sun, you know, the heliosphere, which is like our bubble that protects our solar system, shrinks when the output of the sun drops down during these periods of times, and that has been dropping down, as you can see from this cosmic radiation chart. It has been dropping down for 33 years, the last 3 consecutive solar cycles. So we've had a lot more radiation in over the last 33 years. It's no surprise that we've seen some of the most dramatic changes in those 33 years with regards to the climate. It is by no coincidence. It is a direct result, I believe, of the inbound cosmic radiation. And on top of that, we're going through a weakening magnetosphere directly related to this pole reversal. Now, you guys know that some people out there that are talking about pole reversals, they're talking about grand solar minimums, they're talking about the pole reversal could be an excursion which lasts from 12 to 14,000 years. You know, I don't need to mention these last 4 excursions that have happened over these time periods. If you do a little bit of research, you will find, you know, what they're classified as. But we are well overdue a reversal, a completed reversal. Excursions are the short time reversals, but let me tell you something now. Even during an excursion, at some point, you know, we're going to reach equilibrium, and when we reach the equilibrium, saying 6,000 years into, even if it's an excursion, we're going to reach a magnetosphere drop or decay to probably around about 10%. It's not quite recorded. That's the problem. We haven't got the recorded, even if these events happened 12,000 years ago at the beginning of the end of the last glacial period on this planet. We don't have the data because we simply didn't record it at that point. So, you know, it's very hard to decipher what was going on at that point. Even though we look at the Vostok core samples, we still don't get, you know, a accurate indication as to what took place during them times across a whole range of diversities. So we're not just looking at I'm not just talking about what could happen with the species. I'm talking about what could happen with all life forms on the planet across all the ranges. You know, cosmic radiation affects everything, and even if we go into an equilibrium after 6,000 years of going into an excursion event, where it will, after 12,000 years, go back to where the poles are right now, it still means that during that 6,000 year interval, somewhere in between, you know, the total collapse of the magnetosphere, or at least down to about 10%, we're still going to have a massive inbound of cosmic radiations. Now, there are medical reports out there that state clearly, as you guys know, that, you know, these are carcinogenic. They cause cancers. But more importantly, recent research has found that they also cause cardiac arrhythmic problems in anything that lives, not just human beings. We're talking about animals on the whole. So, you know, this could be, you know, when we go back to where all these prehistoric animals died off at one particular point in our history, it could be directly related to the influx of cosmic radiation, maybe through a pole reversal or even a magnetic excursion event. We just don't know. So we do live in very strange times, guys. And I will just briefly touch on this, even though it's slightly off topic, but I think you find it interesting when we do talk about these things, is what our ancient civilizations were getting up to, you know, around 12,000 years ago. And a lot of these archaeological people would like to believe that they was operating with primitive tools. But let's face it, you know, I briefly touched on this in the last video. When we look at some of the technological marvels with regards to architecture, for instance, nothing we have built in this era will last the test of time compared to these ancient civilizations and what they were building. I'm talking about Stonehenge, the Egyptian pyramids, the Mayan pyramids. Now, you know what, if we only go back a couple of hundred years in our history, we'll find that Christopher Columbus had to sail across the Atlantic Ocean to prove that the world was not flat. And even in this day and age, guys, we still have people that believe the earth is flat. Can you believe that? And we live on a flat earth, and they've even come up with plausible theories to prove this fact, despite we have the fact we have space stations out in space that show live footage of a circular earth or a spherical earth. But getting back to this, what Christopher Columbus probably failed to draw to the attention of other people is that when he sailed, and he was supposed to be one of the first people to sail across the Atlantic, when he sailed over there and he came to the Mayan settlements, he failed to realise the fact that they were building pyramids just like there was on the other side of the Atlantic. So what I'm saying here, guys, is that at some point on our Earth's history with regards to these civilizations, is that they was definitely sharing something in common, even if it is only in the fact that they were both building pyramids. Not only that, when we look at some of the other archaeological sites now, and thankfully for YouTube, we get to see what these amateur archaeologists and people that are interested in these cultures and civilizations many thousands of years ago reveal to us in their findings, that there was intricate machinery involved in building these things. We can't lift 1,000-ton obelisks out of a quarry in one piece without breaking it, let alone move that obelisk to its location where it's got to be erected. We have found that there has been drill holes into granite and diorite, which are some of the most hardest minerals on this planet, and then all of a sudden they turn 90 degrees inside that drill hole. Just tell me something, what sort of equipment were they using in order to get a 90-degree turn in the drill hole? I don't know if we've got the equipment that can do that now. I know that we do on similar circumstances when it comes to boring holes in the ground for oil and things. We do have I believe directional drilling now. So maybe they was using that on a smaller scale, but it shows that this civilization had a technological ability. And the monuments that they've left are way more likely to last the test of time when we compare to what we're building now. Remember, the Burj Khalifa, one of the tallest buildings in the world in Dubai, is made from concrete. 100 years from now, that concrete will reach its strongest, and 100 years after that, it will decay to its weakest. It has a 200-year life existency, and that means the Burj Khalifa will definitely not be around in 1,000 years time. You compare that to the structures that these civilizations were building, and they will be around not just for the test of time that they've lived already, possibly, as there is chatter now about the Sphinx being possibly 12,000 years old due to the water erosion around it. But let's just look at the pyramids, 6,000 years old. Let's look at those monuments here in the UK. With regards to Stonehenge, we know that they transported some of them blue stones from Wales hundreds of miles away. There was an ability to move these things, erect them. There was a technology involved. You can't pull 1,000-ton obelisk in one piece out of a quarry today. So think about it, the effort that went in. There must have been other technologies involved, and there is many speculations as to what they are. But my whole point of talking about all these civilizations is, at some point, they lost it. And, just as they lost it, we could easily lose it ourselves. What we've got to remember, guys, is we live in a hostile environment, and we take it for granted every single day that we're on this planet. We take for granted that we've got oxygen to breathe. We take for granted that we have an atmosphere that protects us from cosmic radiation. We take for granted, that sun is bathing this earth with the radiation it needs in order to produce the chemical reactions that the plants need to produce their sugars and proteins and live and thrive. Not only that, we have one of the most abundant sources on this planet that is vitally critical to sustain life, and that's water. and we take all this for granted. You know, if you just look at the efforts that goes into sustaining a small personnel or crew on board the space station, and what has to be taken up there, and how, you know, everything has to be detailedly checked so that nothing goes wrong. You know, we have that already on the surface of this earth on a daily basis, and an ample supply. But it does not mean, guys, that we can continue, when we see the changes taking place on our planet like they are today, going about our business so appreciative of it, because it could change. You could throw your iPhone, your smartphone right now into the elements, leave them there for 2 years. You know, after a month they're not going to work, you know that. But after 2 years, all those little detailed circuitry on those resistors and diodes and computer chips and everything else that's in that phone will have decayed and eroded. Give it another 50 years and that phone won't even be recognisable. The minerals and the water erosion itself will have probably washed that phone away into dust. So just like we're vulnerable with our technology and how susceptible it is to the erosion of everything else, not just the gases and the water on our planet, theirs would have back many thousands of years ago, and that's why we don't find our ancient computers. Now, I have a few theories on, you know, why that structure was built. You know, the Grand Pyramid. I don't think it was ever built for, you know, Egyptian kings or anything like that. We know that there's a sarcophagus in there, you know, which looks like, you know, a big concrete block, or you know, a granite block or a stone block coffin. But maybe there was something else put in there, something very valuable that would require the structure that is there now to keep it safe. But we know that this pyramid was broke into within the last few hundred years and raided, and whatever probably was in that sarcophagus was probably not a body, because if we look at all the history, most of the kings in Egypt or in that area were buried in the Valley of the Kings, wasn't they? They was never buried in these pyramids. So what was probably put in there was something so valuable that we can only imagine what that was. Maybe it was the last remains of an ancient technology, so valuable that it would require such a structure like the pyramid to put it in, to keep it there safely for probably a generation. But we don't know. We don't know what was in there, because what we're led to believe is there was nothing in there. When they opened the pyramid up and they found out to get out into it, they actually found nothing. Do you believe that? Maybe they found something really valuable. Because if you go back into the history, and I like this about some of the religious textbooks, you know, if you go back into these textbooks, you're going to find, you know, and I say this to people, you know, you can read the Bible a couple of times and you can read it, but you can really read it and you find that there is the mention of some technologies in there, like for instance the Ark of the Covenant. You know, they go into a lot of detail describing how they built the Ark of the Covenant. And then let's face it, you know, Ezekiel's talking about things coming from the heavens, right, that look like wheels within wheels. You know, beings are being described wearing sophisticated suits and stuff like that, even in the Bible. Look at what it says in Revelations about, you know, something descending with the terminology of the bride. They describe it. They describe that this is an object that has a wall, you know, 144 cubits in diameter, has several foundations. Maybe they're talking about something with a technology that descends from the heavens. You know, I don't believe for 1 minute, guys, that we're alone in this universe. I don't believe that this is just an accident, that this Earth is the right distance away from our sun to sustain water and atmosphere where life can form. And I believe that this is, you know, repeated many, many times throughout our universe. I also believe, you know, that we're not alone, even on this planet, that we do have people or beings from other worlds visit. And they might not take the same form or shape as what we are, and I bet you they do in some places take the exact same form. And the reason why I say that is because you don't get many different looking hydrogen atoms from each other. Yeah, you get different isotopes. You can create different isotopes, but in generally, a hydrogen atom is a hydrogen atom, and a helium atom is a helium atom, and you can go through the periodic table, and these are recognizable from each other. You can determine by the amount of protons, neutrons and electrons they have, as to what atom they have, quite simply. And for that reason, I reckon that this universe that's built upon of these isotopes and atoms, has also, just like it's created all these atoms the same, and we'll find them wherever we go in this universe. We will also find the things that this universe builds with those atomic nuclei and atoms. And like I've said this before, if you get a plant on Earth, don't be surprised if we find another plant on another Earth the same. If we get water molecules form on this Earth, don't be surprised if we get water molecules forming exactly the same way on another planet. If they form little pools of water, or even rivers or lakes, they're going to look exactly like they do back on this planet, because this is the simplified building blocks that this universe uses to create. It's going to do the same elsewhere. I know these scientists talk about these exotic life forms that might form out of silicon, but silicon is not a flexible material like carbon is. So I really find it difficult for life forms to be created in a silicon life form that are intelligent, because I do believe that you have to have, first of all, the ability to move, but then we just don't know, do we, guys? So we're going to continue bringing you guys the data on the increasing cosmic radiation, on the movement of the intensities around this world with regards to the magnetic poles that are here right now. And there are 4, for those people that are unaware of it. If you're new to the channel, there are 4 poles on our Earth right now. We've got one over Canada, one in Siberia, one over Australia, and one over the east side towards the Falkland Islands, and in that region, which is probably the most weakest one. And we've took it upon ourselves to put magnetometers in the one that covers Canadian pole. We've got magnetometers now in India and Hong Kong that look after the monitoring of what's going on in Siberia, and likewise in Australia. And I'll just quickly say that the one for our magnetometers has got to come back to the UK. It's in its process of being sent out today to get back here. There's a bit of a problem occur with that. We're going to have a look at it and get it sent straight back out to the Gold Coast as soon as we can, so that we can get back on to collecting the data. But I'll keep you informed of that, and as well as any other data that comes in, and it will be coming in now in steady streams, and we'll be looking at high resolution of that data to see what changes are taking place and over how long a period that they are taking place. So guys, well worth tuning in at a later date for that information with regards to probably one of the most important anomalies that's taking place in our lives right now. If you're a new subscriber, I want to welcome you to it. If you're a long-term subscriber, guys, thanks for holding on in here. You've seen the steady, slow progression of the observatory over the last 3 odd years. First of all, we started off with the magnetosphere, took it upon ourselves to include first of all started off with the trimag, then the magnetosphere sensor. Now we've got 6 magnetometers in different locations around the world. We'll have that number 6 back online as soon as we get it back here to the UK, have a look at it, get it sent back over to its home in the Gold Coast, and we'll get the data coming back in. So guys, I just want to mention one other thing. We are still below what we managed to raise last week for this observatory. If you can help give us a little push, the link's down there for Patreon, and also, if that's not for you, there's the PayPal link. Keep us going, that's all there is to it, and we'll keep the information flowing to you guys. And like I say, we've got the cloud generator coming up soon online as well. So I'll say what I usually do, guys. The links are down there. Have a great week, and I'll catch up with you at some point, maybe over the weekend. I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.